all know, climate change is here. We are seeing and feeling it every day. And the first thing most of us notice is what it's doing to our water. Dry places are getting drier, with droughts driving crop failure, livestock death, and displacement of people. Wet places are becoming wetter, with flooding destroying communities and contaminating water supplies. Because of what we've done, both through causing climate change as well as acting like water is free, we can't count on water being where we need it, when we need it anymore. We're now on the brink of a massive humanitarian crisis. Today, 4 billion people experience water stress, which means they simply don't have enough water during times of the year. And an additional 1 billion people don't have access to safe, clean drinking water at all. That's our present reality. That's today. And the United Nations projects that by 2030, which is really around the corner now, another 700 million people will be displaced because of water insecurity. And yet most of the time, there's plenty of water. The problem is we don't conserve and protect it so that it's there when we need it most. I've been working with water for about 20 years in places where it can be very hard to make sure people have safe, clean water. My early career was as an aerospace engineer at NASA in Houston, where I designed drinking water systems for astronauts in space. This picture is from what NASA calls the weightless wonder. I don't work there anymore, so I can call it by its real name, which is the vomit comet. This is how we test systems in reduced gravity before we actually send them up into space. Astronauts on the space station need the same things we do: shelter, food, air, and of course clean water. But water's heavy and it's incompressible. You can't really pack it down and ship it up. It costs about $20,000 per liter of water we send up to the space station. So instead, we recycle it. Every day we take the respiration, the perspiration, and the urination of every astronaut on the space station, and we recycle it back into clean drinking water. So that delicious cup of coffee you're enjoying today was also your buddy's delicious cup of coffee yesterday. This is cheaper than sending up fresh water, but add up all the engineering, it still costs a few $1,000s per cup of coffee the astronauts enjoy in the station. Back here on Earth, we also value water. We need it for our food, our forests, our animals, our snow and rivers, but we don't really pay for what it's worth. Instead, we act like it's free until it's not there anymore. In Boulder, Colorado, where I live, and throughout the American West, we're entering the third decade of what's called a mega drought, the first in 1,500 years. The Colorado River is the lifeblood for about 40 million Americans, and it's in danger of running dry. Meanwhile, in places like East Africa, another 40 million people are facing food insecurity and the risk of famine because of what is now the 6th consecutive season of drought. In still other places, there can be too much water and it can be dirty. Diarrhea caused by dirty drinking water kills 500,000 children under the age of 5 every year. This is a picture from Rwanda. It's a country I've been working in for about 20 years with an incredibly talented group of Rwandese and international colleagues on these problems of climate and water. In Rwanda, there's too much water sometimes, and it's often dirty. Unsafe drinking water is still the leading cause of illness and death among school-aged children in Rwanda. There's a direct relationship between wealth and health globally. Here's a comparison of the death rate from diarrhea among children under 5 in the 4 countries I work in East Africa, including the Congo, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Kenya, compared to the United States. And you can see that the poorer you are, the sicker you are, still today. So let's take another look at the Earth. I'm sure you've all seen this picture before. This is, of course, the Earth as seen from space at night. And what jumps out at you are the lights and all the electricity used. You might think this is showing you where people live. It's really showing you where rich people live. There are still 3 billion people on the Earth who use biomass, firewood, for their daily energy needs to cook, to clean water, and stay warm. Here's where they live. These are also the folks facing the earliest, most negative effects of climate change on their water. If we dig in a bit more, there's also a link between wealth, health, and who's using energy that's causing climate change. Here's who's using energy and causing emissions today. And here's who's still sick from dirty water. It's basically the inverse map. Climate change is a regressive effect of capitalism. Water insecurity is increasing globally today. Okay, so what can we do about all this? The big idea my team and I from Rwanda and Kenya and the United States have developed over the past few years is to take the world of carbon credits and climate finance and the voluntary carbon markets that you're also expert in and turn it towards solving our water problems. Carbon credits work because the atmosphere mixes. We all know there's lots of questions about measurement and permanence and accountability and equity and access and pricing, but the basic science works because the atmosphere mixes. This has not been true for water. Water's a local problem. If you save water in Colorado, it does nothing for Rwanda. But if we can take these local water problems and generate a carbon credit, we can bring water into a liquid market that incentivizes the global water security actions we all need to take. In 2007, I started a company to get water treatment to families in Rwanda and Kenya who either boiled their drinking water to pasteurize it to make it safe, or just drank untreated water. We developed the first CDM methodologies and the first projects globally to earn carbon credits for water treatment. And we did it this way. When we provide drinking water treatment and we monitor those systems using everything from sensors to audits, even randomized control trials with epidemiologists, we can calculate how much deforestation is avoided, both the demand for wood and the use of wood to clean water. And of course, we generate carbon credits that we reinvest in providing a financially sustainable and accountable water service. Over the past 16 years, we've reached about 5 million people with clean water and have mobilized public and private sector investment from venture capital, buyers of carbon credits, NASA, and USAID of over $70 million, while generating over $100 million in carbon credit revenue for our buyers. This means people get clean water in places where governments and donors currently cannot reach. We're not displacing the donor community, we're not displacing governments. These are people that are not being served, and we're providing a water service. Instead, investors take a big risk, millions of people get clean water, and we see a modest return for those buyers. While some people boil their drinking water in this context, most people just drink dirty water, making them sick. Because of this, our carbon credits are less about directly offsetting and more about making a contribution to repairing the damage we have caused to the climate. These carbon credits are a form of climate repairs or even climate reparations. We caused climate change. Other people around the world are now feeling its effects. By taking money from rich, emitting corporations to provide a basic water service, we're using capitalism to repair climate damages. Of course, the risk climate change is bringing to water is not limited to developing countries. We are bringing these ideas home to the United States. In the US, under the Clean Water Act, we regulate point source dischargers like water and wastewater utilities, but we don't regulate non-point sources of pollution like agriculture. So we end up building a lot of gray infrastructure like this that uses a lot of electricity and causes a lot of emissions to clean our water. This creates our market opportunity to trade both in carbon credits and water quality credits. We can restore wetlands, control soil erosion, use regenerative agricultural practices, and clean up our water without building more gray infrastructure. And when we avoid the construction and operation of energy-intensive wastewater treatment plants, we can generate carbon credits and carbon credit revenue that incentivize these nature-based solutions. Here's a few more numbers for you guys. The US water sector is about $30 billion a year today, and less than 1% of it goes into watershed restoration. Today, water and wastewater utilities produce about 45 million tons of carbon emissions every year. On the left, these are the additional emissions if we use gray infrastructure over the next few years to meet the Clean Water Act and EPA requirements for nutrient reduction. About 30 million tons of carbon dioxide every year will additionally be emitted to clean up our water. In the middle, these are the emissions if we use green, nature-based alternatives. There will be a net sequestration of 4 million tons a year. And of course, the difference between these are our potential carbon credits. 34 million carbon credits a year could be generated if we restore our watersheds instead of building more concrete and steel. It's also cheaper to do nature-based solutions. You all know that already. If we use gray technologies, it would cost almost $30 billion per year additionally to treat our wastewater. If we use nature-based solutions, it would cost about half this, and we would generate about $350 million in first-moving carbon credit capital to incentivize those nature-based solutions. The fact is, water treatment is not done this way in the United States today for the most part. Just because it's cheaper really just isn't enough to get water utilities and their regulators to take the risk in doing nature-based solutions. That additional carbon credit incentive is required for utilities and regulators to take the risk. This is the Yampa River in northwest Colorado. It's one of the few free-flowing rivers left in the western United States, and it's a major tributary of the Colorado. Our team has deployed some of our patented sensors across a 40-mile stretch of this river, measuring how organic and temperature loading is impacting water quality from agriculture, from water utilities, and from towns and ranches. We're able to directly measure water quality, both over time and across the river, and figure out what's causing poor water quality. We're now working with several utilities along the Yampa to identify how nature-based watershed solutions can clean up the river, meet regulatory Clean Water Act standards, and avoid the construction of new infrastructure. And we've already sold these carbon credits, for those of you worried about the demand side, to one of the largest construction companies in North America. Mortenson Construction, they're the biggest installer of renewable energy. They're buying the credits from these projects in advance because they're happy, even as a construction company, to not build things if it cleans up our environment. So we all know that there's contradictions and multitudes in this work. Capitalism caused climate change, and that climate change is impacting global water security. Can capitalism really be used to solve it? This might be a friendly audience that will say yes. I'm not sure it's the best answer. Maybe David has said we should be less apologetic, but I think it's one of our only answers we have left. Climate change is here. Billions of people are facing water insecurity because of climate change. Investing and protecting our water is going to be a key to surviving the changing climate. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. I guess we have time for a question or two, which makes me a little nervous. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm around the rest of the day. It'd be great to, yes, please.
I just remember, although I don't have the details, I had to dig it out of, Gabriel Walker, I'm working on carbon removals at Market Maker Curate. I had to dig it back from some deep files in the back of my head, but I remember that the state of Victoria in Australia actually tried tried to do water credits, and actually had one of the parts of that, one of the components of it was local watersheds. So what they were doing was they were saying that the watersheds could actually could participate in the market as well, and got a fantastically effective result. It was all very local, but I remember it being very successful, and then it seemed to kind of die. It was John Thwaites who was doing it in the state of Victoria. Do you know about this? Is anyone else trying to do water credits?
Yeah.
How can you actually spread this? And that was a public policy and not just the voluntary or non-voluntary market.
Yeah, two quick comments. Water quality trading exists. The EPA in the United States, it exists. The EPA endorses it. It's just really tiny. It's about $50 million a year. So it's tiny. It's disincentivized because regulators don't want nature-based solutions. They don't trust nature-based solutions. They can't measure it very easily, which is where technology and better data science comes in to helping regulators feel comfortable that nature-based solutions are actually treating the water when they can't just put a sensor at a discharge. The other thing that's kept water quality trading and also water volume trading, that's another market, small, is this hyper-local problem. When you have a watershed, either a water quality issue or a water quantity issue, you have one buyer and one seller, or maybe two buyers and two sellers. It's hyper-local. The transaction costs are enormous. There's a lot of friction. The projects take forever to develop. So it exists. We're not inventing that part. What we're doing is aggregating it and pooling that risk by bringing water into carbon credit markets. Our buyers don't care where the water quality credit's coming from, as long as they are water quality-based carbon credits, which let us build a portfolio of projects simultaneously, rather than every given project taking 10 years, and if it fails, the whole project falls, the whole transaction falls apart. Thank you.